Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so today let me just introduce Toby to all of you. Toby is a Senior Director of Agile Solutions at a company called Ventura. And he's quite passionate about, a passionate Agilist, I would say, who loves to volunteer and help grow the Agile community. And how do we know him? He's been part of our courses and he's an alumni member of ours. And I shall hand it over to Toby to kick off the session.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Aarti, and thank you, Leadership Tribe, for having me. As Aarti said, our paths crossed, I think it was last month when I attended a course with Leadership Tribe, and I was really enjoyed the leadership, the passion, and the amount of agile knowledge that the presenters had. And somehow our relationship went from a trainee to an alumni and more to a, collaborative format. And I'm super excited to be here today to share some of the knowledge that I have learned from the trainings, and I'm looking forward to this presentation. So just real quick from a housekeeping perspective, this is a 1-hour session. It is pretty loaded, lot of good information. We also have a very engaging and interactive exercise towards the end, where we will go into breakout rooms. As far as questions are concerned, you put it in the chat window, and our team will, monitor and facilitate those questions as appropriate from a time perspective. With that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So why this topic? I personally, having served at many US federal government agencies as well as commercial agencies, something that I realized was that prioritization often doesn't get prioritized, and people procrastinate this part for two reasons. One is many people don't know the right tools. And the second part is they've had a lot of challenges with prioritization with different stakeholders. And as we all know, if you don't prioritize your actions, you end up doing things which are not high priority. And from an agile values perspective, you're not delivering the highest value work items first. So that's a big problem, right? So a lot of the delivery that you do starts with focusing on the most important part. So today we're going to talk about, why is this conundrum, and what are some of the ways to get out of it? Are you guys excited?
Yes.
Awesome. I am. Please keep your microphones on if you wish to speak, or keep it off. But I would like this to be an engaging, collaborative session where we're learning from each other. This is not a sermon. I'm not here to preach. I'm here to learn with you. So with that, a little bit of background about me. I've been in the Agile space for about 10 years, and I've been an Agilist for about 8 of those. It took me 2 years to, although I was in the space, to actually become an Agilist. So 2 different things, but we'll not go into those details. So I do have a bunch of certifications. One thing that I have learned, and that Krishna pointed out very eloquently a couple of weeks ago, it's not the certifications that you do, but it's what you learn from those and how do you use that in practical life. And 2 of the certifications which I really learned from are my ICP, ACC and ICP ATF. And those are really valuable. And I think Leadership Tribe does a great job about that. On the right, you see a couple of government agencies that I've worked for, but that's enough about me. I will go forward to the next slide. So why are we here today? So we will try to understand the what, the how, and the why prioritization. I touched upon that a little bit, but we're going to go a little deeper. I will give you a very high-level overview of the different techniques that you can have in your toolbox. We will discuss the typical traps that I have seen real stakeholders, real Agilists, Scrum Masters face in actual projects. And these are not from a textbook, or these are things that I have experienced myself. And then my 5 favorite techniques that I feel definitely work. Your mileage may vary and you can try other techniques, but these 5, at least in my opinion, if you at least get started with these, you will start making some headway in that direction. And then we have a really exciting exercise called Project Mustang. I'm not going to give you more information on that till we get there. It really is exciting. I have done this presentation with PMI Washington, DC chapters, as well as several meetups, and everybody gave feedback that they really enjoyed the exercise. So, you know, let's get towards that. So before we start, I think it's important to understand the context of, you know, why prioritization, right? So if you don't focus on the right things, you are going to work on the wrong things, and you will not deliver the right things to people. And basically the essence is the people who prioritize, who give importance to this, who use the right tools, are more likely to get the right things done. And, you know, as Stephen Covey once said, that the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities, right? That puts a lot of impetus on the right things. Hope that makes sense to you. And here we go to the next one. So what is prioritization? This is a dictionary definition, which really is, you know, the actions or the process of looking at the relative urgency of the things that you need to do, right? Every day we are faced with a dilemma of what should we work on? And the act of making that decision in the right way, in simple words, is really what prioritization is, right? It basically is doing the first things first, but it also means the right things first. Hope that makes sense. All right, so let's take a real example. Krishna's smiling because I stole it from him. But let's say that we are in the business of producing remote controls, right? So our company has been given this work to say, hey guys, we want you to produce a new innovative remote control. So how would you know, there are a couple of ways you can go about doing that, right? You can produce the whole remote control with all the buttons, with everything, and then present it to your stakeholders to see for the first time. That would be kind of waterfall, right? Or you can decide, hey, what buttons are the most important to our stakeholders? What buttons do they use most? And, you know, work on that first, share it with them, get feedback, and then start working on the others, right? So that would be more agile approach. So everybody who's here hopefully has, you know, remote controls in their house, and probably multiples of them. So let's shout out real quick, right? What are the 2 buttons that you use the most?
The power button.
Play and pause.
Play and pause, but okay. And if you don't want to shout out, you can put it on the chat window as well. So
Power button, volume,
on, off,
channel increase, channel twister, and
yeah,
the volume button, and volume button.
Okay. Yeah, and then I'm seeing here volume and channel, volume, power and mute. Yeah, so excellent. So these, you know, if we had to produce, you know, innovative product from remote control perspective, we will focus on the most important buttons that our clients are going to use. And then, you know, we will swarm and we'll prioritize from those. You know, maybe you'll get like a 5 or 6 versus the 30 buttons, right? And from those we will produce and then move forward. So hopefully that makes sense. So even with a simple example of a remote control, we have choices to make, and we have choices to make the right things first, and then work on the other things that may not produce immediate value but are important to others, or is a key differentiator between, you know, your remote and what is existing in the market, right? So regular things like, you know, product analysis, market analysis, what are some of of our other producers doing? What are some of the new, themes which are out there in the market? So those are the things that you'll do. So the entire process of prioritization in Agile really is focused on who? The customer, right? We are looking at, hey, what are the buttons they're looking for? What makes sense most? And getting those use cases. So a little bit of, user-centered design, design thinking, as well as prioritization from an Agile perspective. And in Agile teams, we definitely prioritize actions based on value, which we talked about. All right, so let's hear from you guys. In your own programs today, what techniques do you use for prioritization? So it could be that if you are functioning, more at a customer client level, and working as a product owner, the techniques that you use might be slightly different than if you are working within Agile teams, as Scrum teams or Kanban teams. How do you prioritize today? What are some of the techniques? Please put in the chat window. So I see Moscow, I see Visjif. Let's take a couple of minutes. Just want to see what tools you guys are using today. Eisenhower, okay, nice. Visjif, Kano, okay. Viji, good. Okay, yeah, there is a lot of Russian influence, a lot of Moscow everywhere. Okay, excellent. Thank you everyone for being so engaging. I think this is important because we do want to understand what different people are doing globally, and we have at least 3 continents represented in our presentation today. So good to know what you guys are doing. All right, awesome. So I will now show you a slide which has 20 most popular prioritization techniques. Unfortunately, in the 1 hour that we have, we cannot go into detail to each one of these techniques, but I want this to be in your toolbox. So, a good carpenter, a good artisan has different tools in his or her toolbox, and you have to use the right tool at the right time, right? If you use a wrench as a hammer, you are bound to create accidents, right? You need to know when to use the hammer and when to use the wrench. So these are the different, screwdrivers, hammer, wrenches that you're going to have in your toolbox. So a simple way of looking at, 20 or more techniques here is they are really broken down into 4 categories, right? First, major categories are quantitative and qualitative, and then external and internal. So some of the ones that you guys wrote on the chat window is Moscow, Kano Model, Visjif. So those are here, either represented in the same exact terminology or slightly different terminology, but they're all here. So, and this here, shows, what is internal, what is external, what is qualitative, and what is quantitative. So depending on what kind of prioritization you're doing, you might pick any from this list here. Some of these might be familiar to you guys, and some of this could be net new. But again, we are going to share this slide with you, and you should be able to go to this this link here. It's not, I did not create it, and I don't want to take credit for it, but it was ready and available, and it has a lot of good information, and might as well use it, right? So that's foldingburritos.com, and it has those prioritization techniques there. With that, let's move on to the next couple of slides. So we understood some of the needs for prioritization, but I also want to hear from you guys. And in the interest of time, just shout it out instead of typing there. Why should we prioritize? Like, what is the need for it? Why can't we just have our customers tell us what they want us to work on, or have our architect tell us, or our product owner just tell us what to work on? Why do we need to prioritize? Let's hear a couple of ideas from the room.
time to market as well as the business efficiency and business needs.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. The time to market. Okay. So you're basically looking at, your total cycle time. How long does it take from the time, an idea comes into your board and actually goes into a deliverable, and either users or user representatives get to, test it for the first time or actually gets launched in the market. Excellent. Any others? And I see some on the chat window as well. Time to market, business need, minimal viable product in the shortest span. Excellent. Okay.
So to do the proper quantification of importance.
Importance, yes, exactly.
The efficient of performance.
Yeah, to make sure that you are using your resources in the best possible manner to produce value. All right, so I actually put together a couple, actually 9, that I feel are very important from a prioritization perspective, right? So I'll hit a few of these. So one is constrained resources, right? I mean, nobody ever has all the people you need and all the time you need and all the money you need, right? I mean, these things are typically constrained. And given that you have fewer resources to use, and there are competing priorities, right? You have different stakeholders, all with their own agendas, all with their own priorities. And in a shorter period of time with limited number of people or limited skills, you still have to align to your strategic goals and deliver, the best things first. And there is always this fight, right? Urgent versus important. I mean, that's the bane of our existence. There are so many important things to do, but we end up doing what is urgent. And that is something that we want to avoid. We're going to talk more about it in the next couple of slides. Somebody talked about, this drive return on investment through value. We want to work on those important buttons first, right? We don't want the DVR record button to be the first button we produce, right? We want the power button or something else to produce that gives most return on investment. And this is important, sustainable pace, right? If you don't prioritize right and your teams are working nights and weekends, that's going to be a challenge, right? So hopefully this summarizes the need for prioritization. I'm going to skip forward because we have, I want to make sure that we have enough time for the exercise. So we understood what is prioritization and why we should prioritize. And unfortunately, right, there are so many things that happen that don't allow us to facilitate proper prioritization. And here are 9 that personally I feel are the typical traps that always happen. And as agilists, as product managers, as product owners, scrum masters, whatever role you're playing, being aware of these traps and mitigating those, right? First of all, identifying these traps and mitigating those will help you to get away from that conundrum, right? The title for today's presentation is, the conundrum and how to solve that problem. And, a good understanding of these will help you to move from that perspective. So I'll hit very, very high level some of this. Let me just quickly take a look at time. Okay. Good. So loudest voice wins. Sometimes we hear of this as hippo. So it could be the most highly paid person in that room. His or her voice wins, and doesn't matter, what is a more higher priority, what is a more higher value. Because Mr. Chowdhury asked for this, we have to work on this, right? Because he is the one who signs our contract and we want to make him happy. And that's not typically the right way to do it. Next is hidden agendas, right? I mean, a lot of the organizations that we serve have silos, have departments, have, they all have their agendas. They all have priorities. And sometimes what they share with us doesn't reveal what really they're looking for, right? So there are hidden agendas that could jeopardize the prioritization. Something that I've seen when you do get a representation from the silos in a room and you are facilitating the prioritization, couple of things that come into play, right? Those stakeholders give high points to every item. So if everything is high priority, how do you now solve that problem, right? You set aside 2 hours to have this prioritization meeting, and for 2 hours you went through your backlog, and for each and every one, everybody said hi, 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 hi. So now you're stuck, you started with 20 items and you have 16 items which are high priority. So you really didn't achieve your goal, right? And when you do try to negotiate with them, there are these egos that come into play, and that could really be a problem, especially in client organizations where there is a lot of command and control sort of organization, which exists today, right? The second thing, and when you do ask a question to dig deeper, saying, hey, why is that such a high priority? And then a lot of times we go into analysis paralysis, right? We have a limited amount of time to make that priority, but we just go into a rolling cycle of discussions and really don't come out of it. Egos and politics and hidden agendas are kind of interrelated. And then too many cooks, right? They spoil the broth, as they say, right? You have way too many people in that prioritization meeting. And as you know, it's difficult to make any decisions when so many people are involved. And the last part is low engagement, where people don't care. They're just there because their bosses ask them to be there. They have, zero skin in the game. And if those are the people while you're facilitating, chances are that you're not going to, achieve the results. So again, very high level, these are typical. There might be others that are very specific to your organization. Once this session is over, please, kind of introspect to see, how do your meetings happen? What is the culture of that organization? And what can you do to change that, right? And I think that the facilitation class that Leadership Tribe teaches has a lot of those techniques on how to squash some of those problems. So if you're not attended this session, just look up to see if that can solve the problem, and you can have, new tools in your toolbox. All right, with that, here are the 5 top, according to Toby, things that have worked for me. And some of these would be familiar to you and some new. Let me take a look at the time. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about 5 today. The first one is priority matrix. Second is Kano Model. Some of you guys put that on the chat window. Then we have Moscow, we have stack ranking, and buy a feature. So why do I think these work very well? And obviously, your mileage may vary. You might have some other favorite or something that works in your organization. The reason why I picked these 5 is because irrespective of the agile maturity of the organization, this can be done, in the most simplistic manner. Yes, there is VisGIF. Yes, there are so many others, the quantitative ones, but it takes a certain level of maturity to be able to use those tools. And these are, much simple. And, if you're not using any tools at all, these are good to get started with. And then, you experiment with some other ones as you make progress. I'll pause for any questions. I know I've been going nonstop for the last 26 minutes. So I'll pause for any questions on anything covered so far before we take a deep dive on these 5 topics. And we have 40 people. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so with that, let's move to the first one. So this one is called priority matrix. I like it because it's very simple. This is the one that somebody had put on the chat window as Eisenhower matrix. It's also called the Eisenhower decision matrix. This is very simple. And this is not just limited to backlog items or big ticket items. This is as simple as you can use it every day, right? Everyday prioritization. You have, let's say, 8 hours of work, and you have 16 hours worth of meetings that are on your calendar, and you cannot go to each one of them. right? So you can use this simple matrix. I've seen a lot of executives, they have something like this on their wall and they have stickies on what to work on, because it helps you to think through what is urgent versus important. And it's a very simple chart, and I'll just go very, very high level on that. Urgent and important, obviously that should be your highest priority. Then you have urgent but not important. So these are, thorny issues that come up every day, and depending on your organization, how centralized or decentralized the decision making is, that is something that you should definitely look at. But you are getting a lot of urgent stuff, but it's not important, right? So it's up to you whether you decide to delegate that or take care of it yourself. And then there are not urgent but important. And the trick with this is that if you don't take care of those today, they will become urgent, right? And the last is not urgent and not important. So these are from a tasking perspective or work perspective, but it can also be thought about from a feature perspective, right? What are the urgent and important features? Anything with a timestamp, or it has to, a go-to-market for a product perspective. Some things could be, add-ons which can wait, and some things which are, not at all important. So you should definitely not focus on those, right? So again, this is high risk, low value, high risk, high value, low risk, high value, low risk, low value. That's the way you look at it. It's very simple. You can use it tomorrow. You can use it this afternoon. All right, so the next one is Kano Model. This has been around for a long time, right? Since the 1980s. Some of you put it in the chat window. I think Vijay put it. So I think you guys, some of you are familiar with that. So I'm not going to go into the theory aspects of it a lot, but just think about it from a perspective of, in your backlog, what are some basic features which are like absolutely, expected. They definitely want them to be there, right? Imagine your remote control without an on-off switch, right? I mean, that's just not going to, there's no point of having the remote, right? And then there are performance features. These basically kind of differentiate you a little bit, but they also improve customer happiness or satisfaction. It's good to have that. Maybe it's the slow fast forward, or an ability to, okay, you were watching today and then you started again tomorrow. If it can remember where did you stop, so it starts from there. So these are some performance features. And then some excitement features, like, same with the remote control. Maybe there is some AI that has gone in, maybe some intelligent stuff that has gone in. Maybe your remote control can remember at what time of the day, every day, what channels do you go to, right? For example, if I always watch CNN at 8 o'clock at night, maybe my remote can remember that and kind of tell me, hey, Toby, it's 8 o'clock, do you want to watch the news? So that could be something. And a simple example that comes to mind is emails, right? We all have private emails, and a very large number of people use Gmail versus Yahoo or AOL or whatever there is, right? And the reason is that Gmail is always coming up with excitement features, right? I mean, huge storage space. It kind of stacks all your emails together. It works to and integrates with other things that you have. So why is that important, and why did I put it here? Because when you're prioritizing your backlog, think about features that also excite and differentiate you from other products, and don't just focus on basic features. So that's the value of the Kano model. All right, with that, next is Moscow. And this is not a city in Russia. This stands for must do, should do, could do, and won't or would do. And this is very, very easy. I mean, most people understand that. I'm not going to go very deep into this because a lot of people said you know about this one. But it's very practical. And, you can go into any prioritization meeting and talk a little bit about, hey guys, what your priorities are, what are the most important things from a strategic alignment perspective. Let's go through our backlog to do a simple, we must do this, we should do this, we could do this if we had time, we had more budget, more people, more full stack developers. And these are some which we won't do because they really don't bring any value. So now the trick to this is that this has a lot of bias, right? We talked about the traps. A lot of those traps come into action here. So if there are hidden agendas and there are people in that room, they're going to do a lot of must-haves. So typically what happens, or a lot of times what happens, is that when you do this, you do have the potential of choosing a lot of must-dos. So the next technique that I'm going to talk about, after that I'm going to come back to Moscow, okay? So the next one is called stacked ranking, right? In my opinion, this is the most accurate. So what is that? What does that mean? So let's say you have those 20 items in your backlog. You are going to number them 1 to 20. If you are physically present with those people in that room, you would create cards for those and then have people gather around the table or the board and say, all right, folks, from this stack of 20 cards that we have, let's start, just pick any random number and put it where you think it belongs. So for example, I'll just make it up. Let's say there is a spelling mistake in the company's name in one of their website pages, right? So, what is the importance of that? So people will pick that card and they will have a conversation saying that, well, it doesn't really bring functional value, but it affects so many other things for us. So this is probably towards the top or towards the bottom or in the middle. And then they'll pick the next card and they will kind of see in comparison to the card that they picked earlier, does it go on top or bottom? And they do that shuffling till everybody agrees what is the distinct kind of sequence of things, right? Since each of those cards has a distinct number, there is no room for gray area there, right? It's like it's pretty clear what is going to be. Now, something that I have seen in practicality is that a lot of times I have done the Moscow method first, and then maybe there were 60 to begin with, and now there are let's say 20 or 25 in the must-dos. Then you could always use a combination of prioritization techniques. So now if you do stack ranking from the 20 sub lists that came from Moscow, now it's easier to do stack ranking. And then because of those conversations, it kind of places it in the right place. I'll pause for any questions on the couple that we talked about. Okay, so this is very important, and this definitely works. This definitely works. So if you have never tried it, try it in a smaller setting to see how that works. Try it in your Scrum teams. It doesn't have to be a huge, try it and see how that works. The next one is called buy a feature, and I like this because this is not just development teams and Scrum Masters and product owners talking about this. You're actually involving your customer in this. So this is a more customer-centric kind of technique. And you think about, hey, I have X number of dollars to spend. Let's say I give you a bank of, 1 lakh rupees, right? And say, hey, here are the different priced features. What would you buy, right? Again, just like the last technique that we talked about, in this, there is a lot of conversations and negotiations that take place, and it helps to understand what do customers want, right? Where do they feel the most value is? And always remember, you are not the user. The people who are developing the product, you are not the user. The user is king, right? He or she is the one who decides, what product to buy. And if you don't take their input into that, that could be problematic, right? You are going to produce something that nobody wants and is going to have a very short shelf life. And that's not good, right? We want to produce deliverables, products, and services which have high demand and high shelf life and stay in the market for a long time, and you improvise as you go. So again, folks, these are the 5 techniques that, according to me, are the most practical, easy to use, and you can get started tomorrow. There could be others that work in your particular organization, but if you're not using anything, at least experiment with these, right? Don't just stick to Moscow. Try something new, even small, and then learn from that. Okay, with that, we are going to jump to the exercise section. Arti, how am I doing with time?
You've got about 15, 17 minutes left.
Okay, all right, so let's jump to this. This is going to be exciting, but it's 12:38. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a birthday story. So a couple of years ago, I turned 50, nothing to hide. You know, I'm an old man, but a couple of years ago, I turned 50. And I was really looking forward to, you know, an awesome gift. But my wife and my boys, they gave me a coffee cup for my birthday. And I was pissed, right? I'm like, 50th birthday, I was expecting something bigger. Then I look into the cup, there is a check inside for a good amount of money. And I'm like, okay, now you're talking, you know, this is something I can use. And then when I saw the cup, it says 1967. Well, that's where I was born. Like I said, I'm old. And it said vintage. It got me thinking with that and the money which was inside about something which is in my bucket list. And it reminded me of a book that I read by Lee Iacocca. And if you haven't read that book, you know, make sure you get a chance to read that book. I learned so much from that book. But anyway, long story short, Lee Iacocca is the person who revived the Ford Motor Company, and he launched one of the best products, which is still hot in the market till today, which is the Mustang. So with the money that I got as a gift, I decided that I am going to buy myself a vintage 1967 Mustang. Have you guys heard or seen Mustangs in movies? Have you? Yeah? Yeah, it's an exciting car. It's one of the most powerful muscle cars out there. All right, so here's the problem that I have. So this here, you take a quick read. This is all the details about the car. So I was driving through some suburban areas and I found a used car. Obviously, if it's a 1967, I'm going to buy a used car. But I found this car, and this is what it looks like right now. And this is how I want it to be. The budget that my wife and kids gave me is $20,000. I bought this car for $5,000. I got a super deal. And I have about $9,000 to restore it. And I'm going to spend about $3,000 for tax and paperwork. And please don't tell my wife, I have an extra $3,000 that I could use if I have to. But hopefully I don't, so that I can probably use it in some other place. So guys, this is the project, and you are going into breakout rooms right after this. So this is my backlog. These are all the things that need to be done to the car. It's $15,280, but my budget really is just $9,000, and that too, I can only get $3,000 per month use on that, right? Because I do have to pay other things, and hopefully don't have to use the buffer amount. So take a second to take a screenshot of this. When you go into your breakout rooms, you will need this information. So please take a screenshot of this screen. All right, hopefully you all have taken. Arti might be able to paste it in the chat rooms as well, but it's better if you guys just take a quick screenshot so you have that available. Okay, with that, here is the group exercise. So in a couple of seconds, you are going to go into your breakout rooms. From the people who are there in that group, please identify a product owner as soon as you can. It's just for this exercise. and then look at the screenshot that you've taken. And from those 5 techniques that we talked about, as a group, decide which technique you want to use for this exercise today. And then look at the project backlog and come up with the most important or prioritized, basically repair items from that list, given those circumstances, and then create a prioritized list. And then this exercise is just 10 minutes, so be quick. The goal is not to be perfect, but the goal is to go through that exercise and see how it feels, okay? When you come back, you will do a readout on what technique did you use and why, and what are you delivering at the end of those 3 months, right? Is it a fully working car, or is it a car that still needs some stuff? We want to hear from you, how did you prioritize and what did you come up with? I'll pause for any questions, or if you want me to go back to that slide for you to take a screenshot, but given that it's 12:43 in local time here, we have just about 15 minutes left. So 10 minutes for the exercise and a couple of minutes to debrief. I will bring it here in case somebody still wants a screenshot. And Arti, over to you if you want. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. We've got everyone, and 10 minutes done. Opening all rooms.
Ready? All right, and welcome back. Hope
feel cheated because in the middle of it, so much into the middle of
Hey
it.
Krishna,
Exactly,
how are
we were
you? Hey Krishna, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Who's talking? Hi, Karuna.
Vishwa.
Sorry.
Hi guys, welcome back. Let's bring it back to the main room here. Hope you guys had an exciting breakout session. I know a lot is crunched into a little bit of time, but that's reality, right? That's how it happens in real life. All right, let's keep it real, bring it back. I want to hear from a couple of teams. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through 7 teams. So any team that wants to volunteer, I want to hear from you, and that's how we are going to collaboratively learn. What of those 5 techniques did you use and why? And what kind of am I getting? Who wants to go?
Raj, shall we take up Raj and Priya?
Yeah, sure.
Would you like to try? We just, okay. Sharupi, we took a ranking model, and we got within that given time frame, we are able to identify the first 2 months, and 3rd month we are not able to, and we are in the progress of identifying the product backlogs. So we have, and by Andy, for 2 months we have the user stories in ready. So probably Raj will walk through the items. What are the items that we have been identified for 1st month budget and 2nd month budget? Raj, over to you.
Sure. Great, Toby. So the approach which you've taken is since we have a budget of $3,000 a month, so we have to spread 3,000 across 3 months. So we divided the whole thing into 3 stages. Stage 1, get it functional so that we can drive it. Stage 2, it would be more around maintenance and ensuring that it continues in the running condition. And stage 3 would be then the frills is what we're talking about, right? So given the priorities, I think stage 1, which we have gone for, is the oil filter change, replacing tires, replacing the brake pads, repair fuel pipe, replace cracked windshield. So basically fixing all the things which are extremely important so that we can make it functional
Awesome.
and we can take it from point A to point B. The second phase is where we, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, Raj.
Yeah, the second phase is where we talked about kind of a little bit of cosmetic I would say, the desirable, traits of a car, and at the same time, kind of make it more
Safety.
compliant. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's more of safety also, cosmetic as well as the safety things we have mentioned.
That's right.
Yeah.
So this is
Okay.
where we kind of got into discussing, installing new headlights, fixing the holes in the cars, replace jammed rear window, install dark glass, and I guess that's a bit of a frill. Then upgrading the AC unit and going for the extended warranty.
Okay, excellent. Great job, guys. I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but we just, I think, time for one more, or probably not. So thank you for sharing. I wish we had time to go through each one of them, but the point of this exercise is to make it as realistic as possible, right? We often are given this situation where we have limited resources, but a laundry list of things to do, and we have to, there is a good opportunity to use the Kano model, the Moscow model, the stack ranking, and hopefully, different teams experimented with things that are new to you so that you're going to learn. With that, I am going to jump to what did we learn. I think we talked about that.